These are the final images of Lori Bray, captured on camera while she was working at a bar. No one could have imagined that just a few hours later, she would vanish forever. A search was quickly launched, and her body was later found in a wooded area, completely unclothed and bearing multiple severe injuries. It was a crime that shocked the entire Montana community. If you want to know the full details of the case, stay with us until the end of the video. Laurel, located in Yellowstone County, Montana, is a town known for its blend of peaceful rural surroundings and lively community events. Home to just over 7,000 residents, the town is tight-knit and filled with community pride. In 2019, one of those residents was 57-year-old Lori Bray. She worked as a runner at a local casino and was known for her quiet lifestyle. Lori loved the comfort of home, where she lived with her 2 rescued dogs, Mac and Nikki. Lori came from a large, close family. She had a son named Justin, with whom she spoke every single day, and was a proud grandmother to 5. Her extended family included numerous siblings, nieces, and nephews. Deeply passionate about animals, especially dogs, she often supported rescue shelters and frequently fostered pets in need of homes. Her boss and former roommate, Kathy, described Lori as one of the kindest and gentlest people she had ever known. Soft-spoken, warm, and always ready to lend a hand. However, her son Justin believed this generosity could sometimes be a weakness, as Lori was often too trusting, refusing to see the negative in others even when there were clear signs. The 30th of September, 2019, unfolded as an ordinary day. Lori had taken the closing shift at the Cedar Ridge Casino. Just before midnight, she wrapped up her work, secured the premises, and headed home, planning to return early the next morning for another shift. There was no indication that anything unusual awaited her that night. The routine of her life seemed unbroken, until the next day revealed otherwise. On the morning of the 1st of October at 8:30 a.m., casino staff noticed Lori hadn't shown up for work. Even more puzzling, she hadn't called in to explain her absence. Around the same time, Kathy was commuting to work along a quiet road, surrounded only by open fields. While driving, she noticed a car that looked a lot like Lori's, oddly positioned at a remote intersection. The vehicle appeared empty, and the location made no sense. Lori didn't live nearby, and there were no shops or homes in sight. Kathy stopped but kept her distance, uneasy about the scene. Rather than approach, she decided to call Justin, hoping she was just being overly cautious. What she didn't know was that, in another place, something far more serious was already unfolding. That morning, Justin felt uneasy. His mother hadn't called him, which was completely out of character. Concerned, he drove to her house, calling her phone along the way, but there was only silence. When he arrived, Lori's car wasn't parked outside, and that tightened the growing knot in his stomach. Letting himself in, he was immediately alarmed to find Mac and Nikki, her beloved dogs, alone and unfed. He knew Lori would never leave them without care. A quick search of the house turned up nothing unusual. The bed was neatly made, dishes were put away, and it all felt unnervingly quiet. It was possible she had cleaned up before heading out, but something felt off. It seemed more likely that she hadn't made it home the night before. He called Kathy again, and they agreed to go check the car together. When they arrived, Justin immediately recognized the 2003 Chrysler sedan. It was definitely his mother's. The sunroof was open, and one of the lights was broken. Inside, he could see her purse and work keys on the floor in the back, along with her iPhone lighting up as it received calls. Though he had a strong urge to open the door and look further, something told him to stop. His instincts made it clear this needed to be handled by law enforcement. So they dialed 911, handing the scene over to authorities who could investigate properly. As police began examining the car, their findings were deeply troubling. Bloodstains covered a large portion of the back seat. On the passenger door, they discovered a muddy shoe print. Scattered throughout the vehicle were pieces of Lori's clothing, including undergarments that appeared torn and damaged. Her bra was bent at the clasp, and some clothing showed visible blood. The scene pointed to something violent, something deeply unsettling. It became clear that Lori Bray wasn't just late for work. She was missing, and likely in danger. The community, shocked and heartbroken, sprang into action. Lorie was well known and loved, and people were eager to help. Friends and neighbors began spreading the word on social media. What began as a quiet mourning had now turned into a desperate search. Local residents began organizing independent search efforts, joining the official investigation in hopes of finding Lorie. The case quickly attracted public attention and media coverage, largely because such events were incredibly rare in this peaceful area. The spot where her car was discovered was difficult terrain, muddy, grassy, and surrounded by endless open fields, making the search for evidence both complex and time-consuming. Despite these obstacles, dozens of volunteers, friends, and law enforcement officers gathered to comb the landscape north of Laurel, determined to uncover anything that might bring answers. Authorities confirmed that Lorie had last been seen leaving work early Tuesday morning. Just hours later, her vehicle turned up miles away from her home, sparking immediate concern. That's where the search teams assembled. A local news crew reported from the scene, describing efforts at the intersection of Buffalo Trail Road and Laurel Airport Road, near a cemetery. The sheriff stated that 60 to 70 people had shown up to help with the search that began around 10 a.m., a powerful sign of just how much Lorie meant to the community. The sheriff explained that their reason for searching the fields was more about caution than evidence. There were no solid leads indicating Lorie was in that specific area, but out of concern that she might be somewhere nearby and in need of urgent help, they moved forward with the effort. A deputy had spotted the vehicle during routine patrol hours earlier but had no way of identifying the owner at the time, which delayed the connection to Lorie's disappearance. The lack of immediate identification may have cost them precious hours. While ground searches continued, detectives began pursuing technological leads. They were working on search warrants and trying to trace activity through phone records and other digital evidence. The investigation was gaining momentum, but critical questions remained unanswered. The longer Lorie remained missing, the more pressing those questions became, and with every passing hour, the urgency grew. Sheriff Linder expected the search to continue until nightfall. Teams had been combing through the nearby fields, working tirelessly throughout the day. But as the sun began to fade, the landscape became increasingly difficult to navigate. Eventually, authorities advised all volunteers to halt their efforts and resume the next morning, a decision that many accepted with hesitation, but understood was necessary given the circumstances. In the early hours of the 2nd of October, the search resumed and continued steadily throughout the day. But at around 7:30 p.m., detectives received the call they had feared from the start. A man riding his ATV through a wooded area had made a horrific discovery: the body of a woman lying unclothed on the ground. He didn't need to get close to know she was already gone, and that she had endured something terrible. While investigators were nearly certain who the victim was, they made no official announcements right away. With a missing person and now a body recovered, Yellowstone County authorities confirmed they were investigating what they now believe to be a homicide. Sheriff Mike Linder initially did not identify the body as Lori Bray, but called off the search for her, which spoke volumes. News spread quickly, just as it had when she first vanished. Now, the talk in Laurel was of law enforcement surrounding a remote area with forensic teams combing the scene. Before long, it was confirmed. The medical examiner had identified the body as 57-year-old Lori Bray. Her remains had been discovered less than 2 miles from where her car was abandoned. She was found at the bottom of a ditch, curled in a fetal position, entirely unclothed. Her body was covered in bruises and scrapes. Blood was visible in her hair and coming from her nose. Both eyes were swollen, and there were clear signs of trauma on her body. The official cause of death was later determined to be force applied to the neck, though the examiner also noted blunt force injuries to her face. A sexual assault kit was conducted, and while blood was present, there was no physical evidence of semen. Marks on her body suggested she had been either dragged or pushed down the slope, indicating the location was not where her life had ended. Close to her body was a small necklace bearing a cross, which family members confirmed as hers. Near that, investigators found a clear shoe print in the dirt, which closely matched another print previously discovered inside her car. The condition in which Lorie was found left even seasoned officers stunned. The level of aggression and cruelty inflicted on her led some to describe the attacker simply as a monster. Friends, co-workers, and community members were devastated. Lorie had been beloved by regular patrons, admired by her peers, and had never indicated any personal conflict with anyone. Police received a few additional leads when they learned that Lorie had previously been in abusive, controlling relationships. Investigators looked into her former partners, considering whether any of them could be involved. However, for various reasons, each of her past partners was quickly ruled out as a suspect. This brought little relief to the community, where growing fears lingered about a possible predator still roaming the streets of Laurel. Sheriff Linder emphasized that if there had been enough evidence, someone would already be in custody, but added that people should remain cautious. The once close-knit town was now shaken, filled with anxiety that this may not have been an isolated act. Meanwhile, investigators turned their attention to surveillance footage from inside the casino, hoping to piece together Lorie's final hours. Kathy, Lorie's boss and former roommate, provided not only the security footage, but also identified most of the individuals seen in it, offering names and contact information so detectives could begin conducting interviews. On the night Lorie disappeared, the footage showed her going about her closing duties, cleaning, restocking, and checking the bar area. At one point, 2 women stopped by and chatted with her briefly. Kathy recognized both of them as regular customers. A short while later, another person entered the frame, Diego Hernandez, who reportedly worked with one of the 2 women. Diego ordered a drink, prompting Lorie to ask for his ID before serving him. Not long after, she could be seen pointing toward the clock, signaling that the casino was closing for the night. Their exchange appeared brief and uneventful, and Lorie then resumed her tasks. At 11:20 p.m., the footage captured her grabbing her bag, locking the doors, and heading outside. Her car was parked within view of one of the exits. She appeared to walk back momentarily, as if speaking to someone, before getting into the vehicle with another individual. Police quickly confirmed that the person entering the car with her was 22-year-old Diego Hernandez. At that time, he and Lorie were the only people remaining at the casino. No one else was seen in the vicinity. Investigators urgently needed to speak with Diego, not only to understand why he had left with Lorie, but also to determine whether he had noticed anything strange that night. Had someone else lingered nearby? Was there anything off in the atmosphere just before midnight? The answers could be critical. On the 1st of October, authorities located Diego Hernandez at his home. When questioned, he admitted that he was the person seen on the surveillance footage and confirmed that Lorie had generously offered him a ride after they had chatted at the casino. He explained that he had gone there spontaneously, mainly to take advantage of the free drinks. He arrived around 9 p.m., spent a couple of hours playing on machines and talking with other patrons, and eventually struck up a conversation with Lorie. Diego claimed she had simply offered him a lift, and after thanking her, he said goodbye and left to meet a friend to continue his night out. According to him, their interaction was nothing more than a brief, friendly encounter. However, there was something about Diego's appearance that alarmed investigators. His face, hands, and torso bore multiple fresh scratches. One officer remarked that the injuries looked consistent with someone trying to fight him off, something difficult to ignore given the circumstances. Diego explained that the marks were from a physical altercation 2 days prior, with a friend named Nick after a visit to a local strip club. He said Nick had been wearing a ring, which had caused the cuts to his face. Diego remained calm and composed, confident in his version of events, showing no signs of nervousness or evasion. Police followed up and interviewed Nick, who admitted to a confrontation with Diego inside his vehicle. According to Nick, Diego had become suddenly agitated and unpredictable, which led to him placing Diego in a headlock before shoving him out of the car. However, Nick firmly denied that there had been any scratching involved. He expressed surprise at the state of Diego's face and said he hadn't caused those injuries. Since Nick was open about physically removing Diego from the car, it seemed unlikely he would lie about the scratches, especially since he already acknowledged using force. Despite some consistency between Diego and Nick's accounts, the physical evidence didn't fully support their timeline. And crucially, Diego remained the last confirmed individual to be with Lorie. He had admitted to being in her vehicle, Yet there were gaps in his story that continued to trouble detectives. The surveillance footage from the Cedar Ridge Casino was inconclusive in showing whether Diego already had the scratches when he entered. But footage from another bar, taken just hours earlier, made one thing clear. His face had been completely unmarked. Fundraising efforts were quickly organized to help care for her beloved dog, support her son Justin, and cover funeral expense. Meanwhile, detectives were closely analyzing Lori's phone records. They traced several pings between midnight and 3 a.m. that painted a telling pattern. Locations included the casino, the area where her car was discovered, the spot where her body was found, and an additional one near Diego's residence. Notably, the ping near Diego's home came just before the one close to the location where she was ultimately found, indicating she may have already been harmed by that point. What made the case even more disturbing was new footage from another bar, showing Diego's troubling behavior earlier that same night. He was seen approaching multiple women, trying to persuade them to drive him home. One woman, a bartender, repeatedly refused and later said she felt uncomfortable with how persistent and invasive he was being. These actions, combined with the timeline of events, intensified suspicions. Then, on the 4th of October, detectives served a search warrant at Diego's residence. There, they recovered the clothes he had been seen wearing on the night of Lori's disappearance. Some of the garments appeared to have been freshly washed or even bleached. Strange, considering the rest of the room was full of unwashed laundry. Officers also discovered a pair of soaking wet Nike sneakers. Forensic analysis revealed that the tread pattern of those shoes matched the print found both inside Lori's vehicle and near her body. The evidence was starting to align and point in a single, chilling direction. Detectives began combing through Diego's phone and uncovered some troubling online activity. Just hours after Lorie had been killed, he had searched for phrases such as, "How long do investigations last? How long do FBI investigations last? And is there a limit to how many years someone can be investigated?" The timing of those searches raised immediate red flags. Diego later visited the police station voluntarily and provided a DNA sample. After doing so, he changed his story once again. This time, Diego claimed that he and Lorie had spent time talking in her car and had connected well during their conversation. He said they smoked cigarettes together and eventually engaged in a consensual encounter near his home. He insisted that afterward, they parted ways, and he hadn't seen her since. Still, without enough evidence to hold him, authorities had no choice but to release him for the time being. But the forensic analysis came back quickly. The DNA recovered from Lori's body and from beneath her fingernails matched Diego's sample. That development gave investigators exactly what they needed. When Diego was brought back in, he altered his account for a final time. Now, he said that he and Lorie had been in a secret relationship for over a year, claiming she had insisted on keeping it private, and that's why he had lied so many times. He added that she often reminded him not to share anything about their connection, framing it as something deeply personal and hidden. Detectives weren't convinced. They reviewed more than a year of phone records for both Diego and Lorie and found zero communication between them. There were no texts, no calls, and no shared locations, nothing to indicate that any sort of relationship had existed. Surveillance footage from the casino also debunked his story, showing Lorie checking his ID and only speaking with him to inform him the casino was closing. Their paths had not crossed until that single night. On the 8th of October, exactly 1 week after Lori Bray was first reported missing, Diego Hernandez was officially arrested in connection with her death. 2 days later, Diego Hernandez was formally charged with deliberate homicide, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the community. People who knew him were stunned. He had always come across as soft-spoken, polite, and even shy. Friends described him as grounded and genuine, making the news difficult to comprehend. Yet the mounting evidence left little room for doubt. Investigators believed that Lorie had genuinely offered him a ride home, likely feeling compassion due to the late hour. But once near his residence, Diego may have attempted to initiate a physical encounter. When Lorie declined, a struggle likely erupted, and he responded with devastating violence. Detectives theorized that this is why Diego had introduced the narrative about consensual activity. He anticipated that once his DNA was processed, the connection would be made. By offering that version of events preemptively, he may have hoped to frame the evidence in his favor. However, the level of aggression and trauma inflicted on Lorie was impossible to explain away. Authorities called it a brutal and vicious crime, noting that her final moments were marked by severe suffering. Though charges were now in place, investigators anticipated that more would follow as additional findings came to light. Diego, however, refused to provide any clear explanation of the events that unfolded that night. He never admitted to harming Lorie and didn't offer any detail about their interactions. As the news of his arrest spread, the community came together to remember the woman they had lost. A vigil was held in Lorie's favorite park, where she often walked her dogs. Support continued pouring in, with donations directed to the same animal charities Lorie had long supported. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers contributed in her memory. Lorie was remembered as a selfless, loving person, someone who would do anything to help others. At the vigil, one attendee held a sign that read, "Lorie is loved," while many wore purple shirts with the message, "We will always love you." One neighbor, who had lived next to Lorie for 3 years, was deeply moved to see how many lives Lorie had touched. She said she hadn't realized the extent of Lorie's kindness until the community came together. "She would give you the shirt off her back if you were cold," she said. In this moment of grief, the town of Laurel found unity and mourning, lighting candles not just for Lorie's memory, but for the light she had brought into so many lives. Diego Hernandez entered a plea of not guilty, and the trial for the now 24-year-old began in March 2021. He continued to assert his innocence, maintaining the claim that he and Lorie had been secretly involved, a statement that deeply upset her family and friends, who insisted this was completely untrue. During opening arguments, Diego's defense attorney suggested that Lorie's vehicle might have been tampered with or contaminated before law enforcement examined it, implying that any evidence found inside should be viewed with caution. They also pointed out that methadone had been detected in Lorie's system, despite her having no prescription for it. The defense used that detail to suggest Lorie may have been hiding other aspects of her life, including a supposed relationship with Diego. The prosecution dismissed this idea entirely, calling it unfounded and illogical. Their case was built on solid forensic evidence, and they called multiple experts to testify. The jury was walked through the disturbing details of Lori Bray's death, with dozens of photos and first-hand testimony linking the 24-year-old suspect directly to the crime. Among the evidence collected from Lori's vehicle were samples from the leather back seat and fingernail clippings from her body. Joseph Pasternak, a DNA supervisor from the state crime lab, ran tests and found that Diego's genetic material was present under Lori's fingernails. In response, Hernandez's legal team tried to discredit the findings by questioning the crime lab's peer review process. They argued that the reviews did not involve retesting, but were simply second readings of reports by other lab staff, implying that critical mistakes could go unnoticed. Detective Troy Shabanaw from the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office also took the stand, detailing how he used Verizon wireless RTT data to map the movements of Lori's phone on the night of the 1st of October. RTT, or range to tower, is used by Verizon to estimate a device's location based on signal strength between cell towers. Shabanaw was also able to establish the approximate locations of Lori's car and where her body was later discovered. Cell phone analysis expert Michael Fegley confirmed these findings, even creating a visual representation using Google Earth to show where Lori's phone had been during the early morning hours of that day. The data recovered from Hernandez's phone ultimately offered no meaningful leads. Detective Shabanaw suspected that Diego had deactivated his cellular service before being picked up by Lorie that night. A review of Lori Bray's phone records spanning a full year prior to her death confirmed that there had been no contact whatsoever, no calls, no messages between her and Diego. In court, the jury was shown a side-by-side comparison. Diego's visible scratches next to the brutal injuries Lorie had sustained. The images were described as too graphic to be shown on television. It was said that Lorie, small and gentle, never stood a chance. Experts testified that the DNA found on Lori's clothing, inside her car, and beneath her fingernails had a 1 in 60 octillion chance of belonging to anyone other than Diego. An octillion, they reminded the court, is a 1 followed by 27 zeros. Additionally, investigators had found that the pants recovered from Diego's home had been bleached within hours of Lorie's death. Cell phone data presented during the trial further supported the prosecution's timeline, clearly positioning Diego at the center of it all. After several days of proceedings, both sides concluded their arguments. The jury deliberated for just 2 hours before returning with their decision. On the charge of deliberate homicide, Diego Hernandez was found guilty. Then, in a move that shocked everyone in the courtroom, Diego requested to take the stand before sentencing. After denying all involvement for over a year, he sat down and calmly stated, "I did it. I killed Lorie." The room fell silent. The judge, taken aback, said it was something he had never witnessed in 4 decades on the bench. Diego Hernandez was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 35 years to be served before parole eligibility. There has been no public indication of whether he plans to appeal. Lori Bray's death left an emotional scar on her community, affecting not only those who knew her but even those who hadn't. One local resident shared how the case altered the sense of closeness and safety that once defined their town. Kathy, her former roommate and friend, said Lorie was the kind of person who would give everything she had to help someone, even if it caused hardship for herself. She was remembered as a gentle, loving soul who always saw the good in others. Lori Bray's tragic story reminds us how evil can hide behind friendly faces, and how even the safest towns can be shattered in an instant. Her kindness, her love for animals, and the life she built were stolen by someone she barely knew. Let her memory be a call for awareness, justice, and community strength. If her story moved you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life cases, and check out our other episodes. Every voice helps keep their stories alive.